Chapter 12 doesn't seem to have to do with our timeline. It rather seems to be preparing us for the events of chapter 13, which is definitely back on our timeline. Chapter 12 is probably in the top 5 of the most famous books in the Bible, most famous chapters in the Bible, because it is the place that very specifically tells the story of the battle in heaven between the archangel Michael and Satan. And it tells how Satan got thrown out of heaven, and it tells how Satan got thrown to earth. So it's pretty cool stuff. And I'd like some love for this describes the battle in heaven between Michael and Satan. And there are 2 places in the Old Testament that may describe the fall of Satan from heaven. The problem is neither of them actually mention Satan by name. So you just kind of have to interpret that that's what they're about. But here is very explicit. A battle in heaven between the archangel Michael and Satan. We have this mysterious woman who gives birth. Sometimes this is interpreted as Mary, the mother of Jesus, and that the person she gives birth to is Christ. So if that's an interpretation you take, my interpretation of it would be that, okay, so these aren't things that are still to happen. These are things that have already happened. So sometime after the Garden of Eden, Satan is cast out of heaven. And then the Christ child is born, so this is 2,000 years ago, and Satan tries to destroy the Christ child. Remember the 40 days in the desert, and Satan tries to whisper in his ear, all this could be yours. But guess what, Satan? It already is his. But, Satan tempts him in the desert. Now, Hollywood producers have a different interpretation. Almost every movie ever made about Revelation, about the end times from Hollywood, interprets that this is something that Christ is going to return, not leading an army from heaven, but he's going to be born from Mary again, and then Satan will try to destroy him. And it gets kind of confusing if you follow that path. But Hollywood likes that interpretation because you can make a 2-hour movie about Satan comes to earth, and then he spends the whole time searching for this child who was born somewhere in the world and who's Christ, and you can get a good movie. Satan fights a battle with Michael. And it talks about 1/3 of the stars in the sky Satan takes with him. So that is often interpreted as meaning that these are the minions of Satan. These are the angels that followed Satan and have fallen to earth along with him.
They're now demons.
Can be referred to as demons. Revelation 12:9 explicitly connects Satan with the ancient serpent called the devil. Another good question, if you're having a bar argument, is does the book of Genesis specifically equate the snake, the serpent, with Satan?
No.
No, it doesn't. But Revelation 12:9 does. Satan is overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the testimony of the brothers that were accused by Satan. And remember, in Hebrew, Hasatan can be translated as accuser. Satan is filled with fury because of his fall from heaven. And he's going to try to take it out on the offspring of the woman. So whether that offspring is the followers of Christ or it's the chosen people of Israel, either way, Satan's going to take it out. And that's what happens in chapter 13. Satan takes over the world. Satan's in charge. He's the big guy, the head mob. So that's why I think this chapter is meant as a preview of what's to come in chapter 13. Chapter 13 starts out with what's maybe the most ominous verse in the whole Bible. And the dragon stood by the side of the sea. Chapter 13 describes the rise of Satan and his minions on earth. The beast from the earth is probably a political leader. see that when we read the book. The term Antichrist doesn't appear in Revelation, but this would appear to be in the position of the Antichrist. That this is the political leader who's a minion of Satan who's going to rule the earth. But there's a second figure, which may be the one that Paul talks about as the man of lawlessness in Thessalonians. It's the beast from the sea. So this is probably the false prophet. It's going to be a religious or spiritual leader. And here's a wonderful medieval engraving with a very literal view of what the beast from the sea looks like. But I think this is meant to be taken symbolically, that the beast from the sea will wear a suit and carry a attaché case. The term Antichrist, while it doesn't appear in the book of Revelation, it does appear other places in the Bible. 1 John 2, the term is used to talk about apostate Christians. John talks about antichrists in the plural, like there's multiple antichrists. Apostate Christians would be those who are believers who then stand up in public and renounce Christ. 1 John 2, deniers of Christ's divinity are antichrists. 1 John 4, spirits that deny Christ's divinity could be minions of Satan. 2 John 7, deceivers who deny Christ. So John in his letters tends to use the term, kind of broaden the term. But we have a concept of the Antichrist in some books in the Bible. Daniel especially. We have a figure, a fourth kingdom on earth that will conduct war against the states. It's mentioned in Daniel. Daniel 8, we have a figure who will destroy the holy people. Daniel 11 talks about the destruction of the temple by a figure. Daniel 11 talks about a figure who's going to set himself above God. Well, we already know a figure who will set himself above God. It's Satan. Daniel 9, 11, and Matthew 24, 15 talks about the abomination that causes desolation. It will desecrate the temple. Probably talking about the Antichrist. And in Revelation 13, the beast from the sea who has power given to him by the dragon. The false prophet. Does the false prophet appear anywhere else? The beast from Thessalonians, Paul's letter, talks about the man of lawlessness doomed to destruction. Now you could say, well, he might be talking about the Antichrist. But he's already talked about the Antichrist. This appears to be somebody different. Matthew and Mark tell us to beware of false messiahs and prophets. And then Revelation 13, of course, talks about a beast of the earth that has a human number of 666. So the concept of the Antichrist and the false prophet appears other places in the Bible, whether the term is used or not. The mark of the beast, the 666, is described as a man's number. What's the perfect number that's used all through Revelation for God's number? 7. Well, 6 is a man's number because it's less than God. 666 is less than God 3 times. So it's a man's number.
The unholy trinity.
Unholy trinity also could refer to it. It's the mark of the beast. Each digit is less than perfect. Now, some people say, well, you know, each Hebrew word or Hebrew letters have a number associated with it. So what if we, do some translation trickery and oh wow, 666 could be interpreted as meaning primal chaos in Hebrew. I think that's a cool one. I don't think it's true, but I think it's cool. Nero Caesar in poor Hebrew, that's kind of a cool one too, which I don't attach much stock to. Or it could be the Latin kingdom in Greek. But I think this is the key. That each digit is less than God, and then there's 3 of them, so refer to the false trinity.